Still Snoop Dogg and D.I.
Hello and welcome to Villanova Tip Time, a Villanova men's basketball pregame show presented by the Nova Insider Network. I am your host, Chris Notaro, and here we are on this very Big East Tuesday, February 21st, with a big night of Big East action coming up on Fox Sports 1, as Villanova is going to be leading it off, taking on 16th ranked Xavier Musketeers from the Cintas Center in Cincinnati. Again, that's going to be at 6:30 p.m. over on FS1, with Villanova still in search of their first Quad 1 victory. Not something I envisioned saying this deep into February, but here we are. And there is a lot of work to be done if there are going to be any postseason game watches going on in the main line, really of any kind. But before we get into reintroducing Xavier and the keys to tonight's game, we'll talk about the last two Villanova games since Tip Time was off the air last week. We'll talk some news and notes from around the program in the Big East. Then we'll get into Xavier tonight and the road ahead. But like I said, let's start with the Cats last week. And first, the good stuff. We'll call it a double-digit point spread cover versus Butler with a really strong second half. Last Tuesday, the Cats won that game 62-50, avenging an earlier loss at Hinkle Fieldhouse. Villanova's offense continues to be a work in progress as Justin Moore and Caleb Daniels have been really overwhelmed by inefficient shooting. That goes for both games last week, both the win against Butler and the loss at Providence. But the defense, giving up 85 points to Providence aside for a second, the defense has absolutely flipped a switch since Justin Moore's return. And it absolutely shows in games like this Butler game where it looks like an old Big Ten score. We held Butler to 50 points. That's a great defensive performance. If you look at all kind of the nerdy metrics about overall team efficiency, the defense is a top defense in the country when you just go back to middle of January or so, late January, when Justin Moore returned till now, with sort of the primary aberration being that 85-point stinker of a defensive performance against Providence on Saturday. So, with the defense sort of seeming like it's turning a corner, it does have us all feeling like at some point this team has to regress to the mean from an offensive standpoint, right? Well, we're not really so sure, because fast forward to Providence on Saturday, and that's where we saw the not so good stuff. We saw Villanova suffering the same mistakes that have been plaguing the program all season, full strength or not. Those plaguing items being closing out a win against a good team. It really hasn't happened outside of maybe Oklahoma, maybe Seton Hall, and a few other close games against teams that are not so good. But it's becoming a common refrain, especially from the, call it, less than polite Twitter crowd, that the Nova's really struggling to close these games. And hello, Captain Obvious, because I think Nova's something like 4-12 in single-digit contests at this point. And really, it just feels like deja vu all over again when they end up in these late situations against good teams. They've really struggled to close any of them out. I think one of the other things that stuck out to me, one of the other bugaboos, was the three-point defense. Providence shot 7 of 18, which is 39% on the game, but they hit some absolutely stupid ones, and they also hit a lot of wide-open ones out of those 7. I guess you have to give Devin Carter credit, because there were 1 or 2 of them that were just like bad shots to take, where as a Providence fan, you'd probably be mad at them had they not gone in, and they ended up going in. But still, wherever there were defensive breakdowns from Nova, it was often leaving wide open shooters in a switch breakdown. And then I think the last sort of common mistake we've seen from this team that we saw in spades against Providence was really inefficient shooting from the Cats, where their opponent was highly efficient, and missed layups and bunnies from the Cats, where the opponent seemed like they couldn't miss from inside the key. We're definitely going to partially excuse Eric Dixon, who had an absolutely great game with 18 and 8 on a pretty efficient night. But Justin Moore and Caleb Daniels both really struggled. Combined 9 for 27 overall. That's 33% overall field goal percentage. And a combined 2 for 14 from deep. The team as a whole was 8 for 29 from deep. That's 27%. If you're going to shoot 29 threes, really, really tough to do anything if you're going to shoot 29 threes and miss more than 20 of them. So, definitely not trying to pour salt in the wound for you all here, But just as we felt like we were gaining some momentum, a nice 3-game win streak, went into Providence, had a chance to steal this game despite it being ugly, had a chance to steal an ugly one with a game that was close in the fourth quarter of the game before ultimately just letting Providence pull away. So, like I said, we're probably lucky that one was stealable in the end. I think with that, you have officially a slam door closed on any talk of an at-large bid, even if Villanova was to really win out. So Xavier, Creighton, Seton Hall, UConn, they probably would have to go deep into the Big East tournament and potentially win it just to still get in. Realistically, I think if they win these next 4 games, we, especially me, will hype ourselves up into the committee not being able to keep this full strength Cats team out. But still, right now, just from a math perspective, it looks like that door is closed, which means that before we close the book on this season, we have to focus on getting hot at the right time, because the only way in is going to be through Madison Square Garden. And listen, I know folks out there on Twitter are really tired of hearing this. They're tired of hearing it from me. They're tired of hearing it from all the content creators that are just trying to keep people engaged. I get it. I really do. But at the same time, this season's not over. Sure, it's highly unlikely that this Cats team is going to be participating in March Madness this year, and that sucks. But there still is a chance, and that chance is in Madison Square Garden. And, I mean, that's why they play the game, right? So I'm going to be watching. I know a lot of you are going to be watching till the last whistle of the last game, whenever that may be. And we're hopeful that this team does have enough talent on the roster to get it done and to get there. They absolutely do. Whether or not they can, whether or not they will, what the probabilities are, probably not in our favor. But to say that there's a 0% chance is also a little bit dramatic. There's absolutely a greater than 0% chance, a materially greater than 0 chance. So let's look at some of the narratives around the team coming off of this, this last frustrating loss. I think, like I've already said, the fan base's patience is seemingly worn out. Nobody wants to hear about this season's postseason hopes. I get it. And I'm trying not to push it too hard, even though I do believe there's a part of me that believes that it's absolutely possible. And that's because it is. There's been a big uptick in recruiting combo to kind of fill the void of, like, I think everybody's sensing that the at-large conversation is now mostly closed. There's been a big uptick in recruiting combo out across all of the Villanova content creators and the different podcasts and the different write-ups. I think there's really no other way to talk about this year's current senior class of high school seniors, recruiting class, as being anything other than a miss, really, from the staff, as much as I'm not trying to pile on. 3 out of our 4 formal offers went to Kansas, Maryland, and UNC, respectively. We did land small forward Jordan Dumont, whose stock has really only risen since he committed to Nova. I think when he committed to Nova, there were a lot of naysayers who said that he wasn't the Nova really wasn't competing with top programs, but he's really risen on the boards since then to make you think, hey, maybe Nova saw something that the others didn't, and I'm definitely willing to ride with that. And then also 4-star Chris Parker, class of 2023, is still in play and is still talking about Villanova as a possibility. So I think that would be a really big win for this coaching staff, who's kind of in need of a big win. So we're looking there, hopefully. But the transfer portal has been a big talking point for a lot of folks, given that this 2023 class isn't going to be a big class or an overwhelming class. But the transfer portal is an interesting thing. Villanova hasn't dabbled at all since the whole landscape around the transfer portal has really changed. Obviously, I would say, Caleb Daniels transferred, but that seems like forever ago now, and that was before the whole landscape changed. And so the transfer portal is this interesting thing that Villanova hasn't really dipped into, because you would think it was sort of counter to the culture that Villanova is trying to build, but it's a force that's here to stay, and Villanova is going to have to figure out how to play in there to build a competitive team for next year and years beyond. You look at what Ed Cooley's doing this year with Providence. Look at really any Big East team has impact transfers amongst their best 2 to 3 players. Now, I guess the same could be said for us with Caleb Daniels, but like I said, that was from a different era. So I think the transfer portal is going to be a big proving ground for Kyle Neptune and company this year. Lots of buzz around the 2024 recruiting class and Villanova being in the mix with, really the best of the best. Honestly, I think a little bit too early to talk about that yet, especially for a lot of the casual fans that really don't pay attention until senior year recruits, and I'm very much among that crowd. But you do have to be a little bit concerned with the compounding effect of a down year for the program this year after a coaching transition and a bit of a whiff on the 23 recruiting class. You're definitely worried that kind of creeps some doubt into the mind of future recruits. But from all indications from everybody around the program, the pipeline is strong, the culture is strong, and you want to see some of these land here sometime soon. While that might sound like an overall pessimistic picture, I think what we have here is a huge opportunity for Coach Neptune to really start to do things his way, start building the program with less of a vibe of picking up the post-J pieces, and really figuring out how does he want to embrace the transfer portal and sort of process around that, as that's just going to have to be part of this team and sort of accelerating a rebuild. And obviously the X factor here when we look at next year specifically is going to be Justin Moore. There was a Philadelphia Inquirer article, I think this morning, really talking about that Justin Moore's decision to, come back next year versus leaving for the NBA this year. I think it depends. He got back into the rotation late. He's only started his first game at the end of January. So it'll be really interesting to see whether or not he feels like he has the draft capital to make the jump, or does he want to run it back and sort of lead this team? Because I think that's a whole different equation. If you have Justin Moore coming back, leading this team, I think Cam Whitmore is long gone. I think he's, a lotto pick recruit. He'd be silly not to move on. But otherwise, with a fully healthy Justin Moore leading the wave of next team, maybe adding an impact transfer or two, that's got me feeling pretty excited about what Kyle Neptune can really do in his first big year. Excuse me, not his first big year. His first year of sort of like, not really talking about the transition anymore from coach to coach. It's really his program kind of fully headed into next year. So before we get into Xavier, let's talk a little bit about the basketball being played in the here and now. Let's talk about the Big East, where the group at the top has clearly separated themselves from the pack. Of course, I'm talking about Marquette, Xavier, Providence, and Creighton. Marquette leading the way, but Xavier, Providence, and Creighton all within one game of them for the regular season Big East title. You've got Marquette at Creighton tonight after Nova Xavier, and an absolutely huge one. Probably want to be rooting for the Blue Jays if you want pure chaos. You also get Providence at UConn tomorrow night, which will be pretty big, even though UConn is probably too far out of it. They're 4 games off of the top spot at 9-7 in conference. I think UConn might be too far out of it to really make a shot at the top spot. They definitely can play a spoiler for others and massively disrupt the seeding for the Big East tournament at Madison Square Garden. But really all but that 5th seed is decided. And why is that important? Because the top 5 seeds get a bye and don't have to play on Wednesday. So you have UConn and Seton Hall within a half game of each other fighting for that 5th seed. One of them is going to finish 5th. One of them is going to finish 6th. Villanova is looking very likely to finish 7th. If you look at the sort of the percentages of where they finish, I think Nova's like 60+% likely to finish in that 7 seed. So all but guaranteed at this point that Villanova is going to be playing on Wednesday, with the lone exception to that being likely they would need to win out from here. Of course, their last game is against UConn, and that would sway. They with games against Seton Hall and UConn next week, they do theoretically control their destiny and could mathematically find their way into that 5th seed, although it's looking very unlikely, and looking very likely that the Cats are going to play on Wednesday at the Big East tournament. So with just a few minutes left here, let's talk about Xavier. Let's talk about tonight's game. And of course, Xavier coming into this game ranked number 16 in the country, 20-7 overall, 12-4 in the Big East, and just a game behind Marquette for the regular season crown. Sean Miller's first season back coaching the Xavier program after a notorious stint at Arizona, following his first go-around with Xavier. Really impressed by this Xavier team, especially when you consider that they've been without Zach Fremantle for the month of February, and they're still hanging in. They're still competing for the top spot. And they have 5 players averaging double figures. Of course, that includes Fremantle, who hasn't played in about 3 weeks. But they're an absolutely stacked offense. They're a top 10 offense nationally. They hung 88 points on Nova the first time they played. This is an absolutely dangerous team. They are probably a Final Four team. They're at least a Final Four contender if and when they get Zach Fremantle back. But just the fact that they're still competing for this Big East regular season crown in a tightly contested year without one of, if not their best player for the last month, is just a testament to how good this team really is. So who are the other players we want to talk about? Sule Boom is having a revelation of a year. He's among the top guards in the Big East. He's averaging 16 points, 4 boards, and 4 assists per game, an absolute monster average box score. Forward Jack Nunge kind of sticks out as the guy who needs to step up with Fremantle out. He's averaging 14 points and 8 boards himself. He's also a forward who's averaging almost 42% from deep, so he's kind of a dual inside-outside threat there, a matchup problem for a lot of teams. And then guard Kobe Jones, he's adding almost 15 points a game and 5 boards, while also himself hitting 41% from deep. So even though you have Xavier, who's a top offense, they're among the most efficient and most high-paced two-point shooting teams. They've got a couple guys who are averaging big points and averaging, well over 40% from deep. So they can hurt you inside, even though they're not as prone to. They can absolutely hurt you outside. And they're honestly, all Villanova loyalties aside, Xavier has been a really fun team to watch this year. Kind of a bummer that they've been without one of their best players, because you want to watch them at full strength. Of course, if you're Villanova and you're desperate need of a quad 1 win, getting Xavier at Xavier, which is a tremendously difficult place to play, and getting them without Zach Fremantle is something you're absolutely going to welcome. So let's talk about keys to the game here with the last 90 seconds or so. Can the Cats continue their defensive resurgence? Xavier is a top 10 ranked offense. Nova gave up 88 points to them last time out, albeit in a game where Fremantle reigns supreme, and he likely won't be playing tonight. Nova gave up 85 to Providence on Saturday. So as much as we want to talk about a defensive resurgence, Providence is a very similar made-up team as Xavier, and Nova really let them run free on Saturday. So will the real Villanova defense please stand up? Can we continue this defensive resurgence? If we can, it's going to go a long way to notching Villanova's first quad 1 victory. If Xavier is able to score 80-plus points, it is likely that Xavier is going to win this game. Nova doesn't have to be an offensive juggernaut tonight, but they can't be as inefficient as they've been and hope to win these games on the road. So I think that's the second key to the game. Nova needs to have a more steady offensive night with better overall efficiency. They can't be missing these bunnies and these layups at this clip that they've been missing them. I don't recall a season in memory where Villanova has missed these short little layups and bunnies at such a high clip. You can't expect to go into this Xavier team's building and walk out with a win and lose the inside battle so lopsidedly when it comes to both short shooting as well as rebounding. So Nova's going to need to really focus on its efficiency and not falling so far out of whack in that category. And I think lastly, it's a key to this game, and it's really a key to the season. Like I said, the at-large bid is pretty much closed. Nova needs to build momentum headed into Madison Square Garden. It's really the program's only play at this point. So what you're looking for is improvement. You're looking for the defense to show up in a game like tonight. You're looking for the shooters to get hot, shoot them up, sleep in the streets, right? We're going to need to see it if Villanova's going to notch a quad 1 win. Finally, let tonight be the night. So with that, we're about down to game time. Get your TVs flipped over to Fox Sports 1. I'm your host, Chris Notaro. Ladies and gentlemen, it's tip time.